Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Jank Tank, episode number, I think, 31. Talk about that here in just a second. My name's Timothy Zaccanino. I will be hosting for you all today. I'm joined here by the Carl Tucker of, what's his name? Tucker Carlson? I don't know.
The Tuckbat Carl man.
Yeah, the Tuckbat
the guy who's
Carlman
running around right now saying that Zen is for girls because he proposed a product placement deal with him and they said no. Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, we've got the Jank Tank version of him with us today, and of course we could not be here without Shotgun Chris. He's here with us
Shotgun
as well.
Chris.
So,
Paul Shotgun Chris Bagala.
So I could ask you guys how you're doing, but I think we all know that the three of us are just riled up right now. It's really early in the morning for me, so it's a little strange, but we're all kind of feisty today. And whatever the title of this episode ends up being, hopefully it'll cue you in on why. But we're pivoting a little bit from an original plan here. So first things first, it's going to be a little bit weird because this episode that we're recording right now is not going to be out for about a month's time due to the way we're scheduling out our episodes. But we've got like kind of a big topic issue that it felt like we should discuss as part of an episode, because even though it's not specifically Cube related, the 2025 set announcements that we just heard about a couple days ago are concerning for Magic the Gathering, not just Cube, but Magic as a whole. So we are going to spend an episode talking about the implications of the announcement, you know, what that means for us, what that means for Magic, and obviously we're going to be ranting a little bit.
No, I would never do that.
Gotta strike the iron while it's hot, not give us time to cope and rationalize why this is okay. No, we're going right in with 2 days of thinking about this.
Yeah, we want to get in there before they actually show us preview cards, and it's like, man, this card's kind of cool though. Like, do we have to play that in the cube? That sort of thing.
I'm gonna hold the line here, and I don't care if they print Venom, and it's the coolest black card they ever printed. Miss me with that shit. I don't know. Anyway.
Nope. What's going to happen is they're going to print Venom, and it's going to say, when Venom enters the battlefield, sacrifice something, and Chris is going to be like, I love it. Let's get in the cube.
Sacrifice
probably.
A creature? Oh, I can do that.
Sacrifice target Spider-Man.
Protection from saprolings? Is Spider-Man actually a spider? Will he have the creature type spider?
Don't know. It's probably going to be creature type superhero to lay the groundwork for them printing every superhero that's ever been made into Magic.
And then we'll get Captain America as a superhero lord. He'll give all superheroes +1/+1.
We're gonna get superhero tribal.
We literally just got a Captain America card. In case you missed it. And by the way, they released a Storm card, Storm from X-Men, and it does have the creature type hero, so.
Oh my fucking god.
It's legitimately creature type hero. It has, I think it's mutant as well, which makes sense because the X-Men are mutants. But
by the way, I just want to say, as a deeply negative person, that I really hate being right. I really hate being right. Most people enjoy being right. I hate it so much.
Well, because when you're right, you create things like Stoic, Sphinx, and Hope-Ender Quaddle. So, I don't know. Maybe your right mentality needs to be not blue control oriented when it comes to Magic. I don't know.
And wait, am I the reason that the world is dog shit right now? Is it am I just willing things into being? All right, I'm gonna have to start doing some yoga, relaxing, stop drinking so much.
I'm not gonna blame the entire state of the universe on you, but as far as blue Magic design goes, I think you're partially responsible. Let me get this intro stuff out of the way. So,
okay.
Before we get into our rants, remember the best way to support Jank Diver Gaming and the Jank Tank podcast is to join our Discord server. Come draft with us. Give us your feedback. It's a great place to hang out with like-minded individuals. Talk about Cube, Retail Limited, all things Magic. Come talk about Ether Drift with us. Come talk about Marvel's Spider-Man 2025 with us. You can find links to our Discord server wherever you're listening to this podcast. We host tons of scheduled drafts throughout the week. We've got Peasant Cubes on Saturday. We've got the mainline Jank Diver Cube on Sunday. We've got F&M style drafts on Fridays where our players vote on a cube that they want to play. And we've got various guest cubes created by members of our server throughout the week. So there's always plenty to do on the server. Check out our socials, Twitter at Jank Diver Gaming. You can find us on youtube.com/Jank Diver Gaming where all of these episodes go up as well. And then you can find Teld streaming on twitch.tv/Teld Talks. Also on YouTube at just, I believe, Teld Talks, correct? That's just the YouTube channel as well.
Yep. YouTube and Twitch, both of them are Teld Talks.
Yeah, I got a little icon that something Fire Emblem-y came out not that long ago. I didn't click it, sorry, but I did get the notification. So you can find Teld putting out some different video game content and Magic content in various places. So I mean, we're not doing a single card discussion here. What we're talking about today is not really cube related. It's not really gonna be a level up, but it is something very concerning. So the kind of gist of what we were talking about before firing off this recording was the 2025 announcement that came out a couple days ago about like what sets are coming out next year. And we can talk about individual sets and stuff, but one of the big headliner things that came out was a restructuring of the way they're going to release standard sets. We're getting 6 standard sets in 2025, and they have officially announced that for every Magic IP set that comes out, we will also be getting 1 Universes Beyond standard set. So we can expect next year 3 Magic IP sets and 3 Universes Beyond sets, in the same vein as Lord of the Rings is kind of the only example that we have to go off of right now. So we know next year we're getting Final Fantasy. We're also getting an entire standard set that is just called Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man, and there's an additional unannounced Universes Beyond set coming out at the tail end of next year. So these are all standard legal now as well. So you cannot hide behind the argument of, oh, if you don't like Universes Beyond, just don't play it. You know, don't engage with it. So, I mean, every Universes Beyond thing that comes out now is a standard set. So you must engage with it if you play any format at all, because it'll affect standard, it'll bleed back into modern, legacy, so on and so forth. It'll be in Commander. The stuff will just be legal everywhere. You're going to sit down and watch a Pro Tour where people are going to be playing, you know, Shieldred the Apocalypse on the same board state that has Carnage or Catwoman or whatever. And this has got people riled up, and it's got us riled up. And me, as the big Magic apologist here, who usually likes majority of what Magic does and prefers to be, you know, positive about the releases, like, even I am upset to hear this move towards Universes Beyond being as big of a slice of the pie as it is. So enough talking for me. I'll throw it to you guys to kind of give initial thoughts about this, and whether it's set related or Universes Beyond related, or, you know, bereft creativity related. Like, go ahead and just like throw out some initial thoughts here. We're going freeform here. We don't have show notes for this episode.
This is 21st century corporatism in its absolute fucking worst. And like, this is going to sound really old head, and I realize it's going to sound old head, but like, dedicated nerd money like built this company, and now non-nerds are fucking running it, and they're gonna do whatever they can to marvelize it, in this case quite literally to extract as much money out of the game system as possible. I'm gonna keep playing Magic because I like playing Magic, and one of the great things about being a cube curator is you get to decide whether or not you want this bullshit like in your cube. Like, you don't have to put Cloud in your cube if you don't want to, but I really resent that they're making us make a conscious choice to do that. Like, I resent that Hasbro is making us curate the experience of engaging with their product. And you get to do that, but like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. This to me is like emblematic of how culturally bankrupt, like, and I'm talking about this pervasively, like in the culture, like how just bankrupt popular culture has become. Like, this is just purely about cash. And I understand that they're a company, but they existed for years. Everybody was getting paid. They were making enough fucking money. This is about making even more money to make a select handful of people at the top of the food chain even richer than they already are, so they can buy their like third yacht or whatever. And the rest of us get to watch this thing that we love become just another massive cash grab. That's my 2 cents.
I think my biggest issue with this is a couple of things. Firstly is that I don't like being forced to engage with Universes Beyond. I did not like it existing, but at least when it was isolated to other places, especially before when it was just Commander and stuff, like that was a little bit different. I think that I've got a couple of big issues with. First of all, is that people have been calling this slippery slope since the Godzilla cards in Ikoria, where it was like, okay, these are Godzilla IPs, but they're not mechanically unique, and that was the foot in the door to doing all of this. And like we had those questions then with like how long till these are mechanically unique. But anyways, I think I have a couple of main issues with this, and firstly is the sheer scope of it. Like half of our Magic sets, we're so creatively bankrupt now that half of our Magic sets are not going to be Magic IPs. Like all of these stories and planes, an infinite multiverse in which you can go to any number of planes. And we have to spend half of our time doing like Fortniting our game by bringing in third-party IPs. When it was if it was one a year, you know, like the Final Fantasy set, I won't even lie, I'm actually kind of looking forward to that set at this point. Like, because Final Fantasy's cool, it's fantasy, like it's in the fantasy genre. I think if they did one of these a year and they wanted to do a Final Fantasy set, and then they did a Brandon Sanderson crossover, and then they did like a FromSoft crossover, and it had like John Dark Soul and Elden Ring, and it was like stuff that made sense in the context of a fantasy universe, I could handle that. But like half of our sets, and really it's the Spider-Man set that's triggering me right now, because it's just like that is so far from what we are expecting as Magic players, and it does a second disservice to Magic. Because now, instead of having Magic do their own take on a plane where superheroes exist, right? You could have a Magic plane where people had costume superheroes, and it's like a Magic take, kind of like how other sets are a Magic take on different settings. But now we're not going to have that. Instead, it's just going to be whatever third party, Batman or Spider-Man or whatever stupid thing that already exists. We don't get those unique Magic takes anymore. We're just going to have a third party set. And then it makes a lot of these other sets that I was looking forward to, like Echoes of Eternity is cool, is like super cool. I actually won't even lie, outside, like I really want to see the return to Tarkir, but I think the Echoes of Eternity is conceptually the set that I'm...
Edge of Eternities.
Or Edge of Eternity, excuse me. I think that's the set mechanic, like, or thematically, that I was actually really looking forward to, is because, like, it's Magic's take on, like, a science fiction space opera type set. But that just doesn't have any unique flavor, because next year, we're going to get Star Wars, or we're going to get Star Trek, or whatever. And it's just going to be, what was the point of this set? It doesn't need to exist, because you could just have a third-party IP that already exists with it.
That's an
excellent point.
Yeah, that's a good point I didn't think about, because think about the things that come to mind, top-down designs, right? Like Theros, one of my personal favorites, Greek mythology. Well, what if we just get the God of War set, which is like, oh, here's all that Greek mythology. Or, I mean, even God of War Ragnarok, the retrain and stuff, is like basically Kaldheim, right? We've already mentioned this on the podcast once, how Assassin's Creed came out, and nobody cared about it because it was such a throwaway product. But there was a card in that set called Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. But we already have the Magic version of Thor's hammer in Torolf's hammer. And now we're doing Marvel, we're actually going to get literal Thor's hammer Mjolnir. So it's like you're crossing, not only are you doing this Universe Beyond thing, but like you're also like kind of overwriting the existing like top-down designs that were based on these things in the first place. So I don't know. That's a little bit rough too. That's a point I hadn't even really considered.
Yeah, it's Teld I think touched on this already, but like I didn't even think about this at first, but the fact that like they need to design this much fucking Magic every year, and that this means that like instead of getting 3 unique kind of like Magic like IP products instead of 4 is also just incredibly problematic. Like just everything about this sucks. And I'm just going to go on record, and again, I'm going to sound like a boomer here, but I feel bad for Gen Z. Like, I legitimately, because this is emblematic of something that I think is happening, like, generally across the culture, like, I legitimately feel bad for Gen Z. Because they are coming of age in an era where the maximization of financial extraction is, like, defining the artistic culture. Like, they're just not... I'm going to try to not make this too much of a tangent, but, like, whether or not you think the White Stripes suck, and I'm sure a lot of younger people do, but, like, Jack White was sort of like the last rock star. And what I mean by that is like...
People think the White Stripes suck?
I'm sure that they do. Jack White is cringy, don't get me wrong, like as a person.
Okay.
Chris, even though I love him. We need
to just... The White Stripes is my actual favorite band. I love the White Stripes.
They're actually one of my favorite bands too.
But I will agree, modern Jack White is pretty cringy.
Yes, correct. But anyway, where I'm going with this is like the first time that I went to Detroit for work, I drove, and don't go there because the neighborhood's really dangerous, and I was worried I was going to get carjacked. But I drove to the house where they formed the band. I went and did like a kind of like a driving around and like stopping in for a drink at like all of the bars that they used to play shows at when they were a small band. And I felt connected to that because coming up in college in Greensboro, North Carolina, I went to a lot of basement shows, right? And there was this feeling at the time, and like almost none of the bands that I was going to see when I was in college were going to like make it big or whatever. But like that was the story of the White Stripes. Was once upon a time they were a band in a scene that probably had like 600 people in it. And then they got discovered, and Jack White wrote Seven Nation Army, and now there are people who have like never even heard the song like chanting the melody in like Argentinian soccer stadiums. Like that happened.
It's like the last modern like folk. I've heard of it like saying it's like the last modern folk song, and Jack White's like the last modern rock star, like the last like self-grown sort of household name type thing, like where you have like a trajectory, right? Like as opposed to being created by the media apparatus.
Exactly. 100%. Like you just succinctly put the thing that I was going to take like 15 minutes to spit out. Like massive, insanely profitable band, and completely and totally organic. Like the band was started by a fucking weirdo that used to write poetry on the inside of like the furniture he was reupholstering. And like his whole aesthetic was like, we're just going to be red, white, and black. Like he was a strange dude.
He was a Mardu gamer.
And Mardu gamer. Yeah, just like me, baby. Yeah, and like that grew from a like an organic scene. And then I remember back in like Teld, you're a rap guy, so you're almost certainly familiar with what I'm talking about. But there was a brief era where the internet was doing this thing where localized music scenes really still existed. But once they started producing like interesting culturally relevant content, because there were actual A&R people, like artists and repertoire for like younger people who don't know what that means. The music industry used to employ artists and repertoire people, and their entire job was to go to a ton of fucking shows. And then basically executives trusted these people enough that if somebody like came from like a small local show and was like, this band is fucking awesome and there's a potential for us to like make a record here, then they would make a record. Like you could quote unquote get discovered. That was possible once upon a time. And like Tell, what I'm getting around to is the Houston rap scene. And I'm just going to say something brief about it and then like turn it over to you because you probably know way more than I did. But this was in an era where like a local rap scene could exist because like localized taste still existed. But the internet was at a place where these scenes could be discovered and then commercialized, which in and of itself is like maybe kind of good for the artist. But then like the Houston rap, like chop screw, lean, whatever, that sound became like subsumed into popular rap culture in the same way that like Louisiana rap did with Lil Wayne. But we moved on from a point where the internet was just like consuming things like a giant predator and reprocessing them to having established like what the easiest to sell and cheapest to make commercial sound is. And like now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying undergrounds don't exist, but like the idea of like a New York rap sound, like that shit doesn't exist anymore. The idea of a distinct like Houston rap sound, that shit doesn't exist anymore. And I've been talking about music for a while, so I should probably get off this particular platform because it's not what we're talking about. But like this Magic announcement is just emblematic of the fact that like money has just completely destroyed the potential profitability of art, because previously like art dictated its own terms and then was sold, and now money dictates what art is.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize, I mean, Magic is a product, like, and I think the biggest thing, I do agree with you, like your music analogy, I think is good enough because it kind of expresses the idea of like, you used to have localized creative processes. If you've ever listened to like, it's because we live in the South, like if you listen to like Atlanta rap, like that sort of dirty trap sound, and compare it to like Nas, Biggie, Jay-Z, like that New York rap, there's just two totally different vibes there when you listen to like Outkast or like Ludacris or any of these, or Future or any of these other like Southern raps versus like New York, and they create two different styles. They're like modern New York drills, like one of the few examples of a localized scene, but even that's kind of become just everywhere now. And so, like, I think bring it back to Magic terms is we used to see a lot more individual creative processes and projects where the Magic set designers had a goal and a vision for what the set was going to look like, and they would see it through. And now it just sort of feels like we're taking the easiest possible route to create more product that we know will be successful and profitable because people are obsessed with their hobbies. And Magic is a lifestyle game that's coming into other modern lifestyle hobbies like, you know, Marvel Comics or Final Fantasy or whatever, where people like attach part of their, I don't know how, but they attach part of their self-identity to these products. Like we've stopped attaching our self-identity to things that are meaningful and started doing it to things that are products. And I think this is like the entire internet apparatus taking advantage of that. I don't want to get too deep on that, but I want to talk more about this specifically, like what's going on. But like one of my biggest issues with this, and Tim, I know you probably can speak to this since you work for WotC, but you know, they kind of created their own problem in that the Universes Beyond sets had a huge power disparity and were relatively unpopular and couldn't be put into mainstream sets because of the way that their design processes works. And so now they've created a solution to a problem that they created that nobody likes.
Okay, so a couple thoughts there. Before I even touch that, I do want to say, just to bring a little bit of positivity, because I have to be that guy here, bring a little bit of positivity here to this whole conversation. I have no doubt in my mind that the actual game designers, that the people who are making these cards and consulting with like whatever outside forces for each IP exist, the game designers are actually like sitting there doing their best to create game pieces that are, you know, fun and playable and, you know, stuff like that. So like everything that we talk about kind of stems from the higher ups, you know, the people who are like pushing this directive onto the game designers. I do not want to disparage the work of the people who love Final Fantasy and are like really trying to make the coolest version of Cloud and Sephiroth and Final Fantasy 7. I know, I know that's the kind of joke there, but like the game designers are doing good work with what they are being told to do. It's even more of the capitalist,
WotC, right? It's not even WotC's fault. They got a directive of what they have to do from Hasbro.
I know people at Mark Rosewater, how could you do this, Mark Rosewater, that I'm sure he gets all sorts of threatening emails and stuff like that. But like at the end of the day, like Mark Rosewater is probably only a small percentage of the decision to push Magic in this direction. You know, even being the CEO of Wizards of the Coast, they are owned by Hasbro. And to Chris's point, the Hasbro executives do not care what Magic looks like or what, you know, public opinion is, as long as, you know, money comes in. So, you know, a lot of that decision gets kind of pushed down on them. But I wanted to shout out the game design. The game designers do good work. I was very, you know, you could see it in something like Lord of the Rings. You could even see it in something, like Assassin's Creed, where the consumers didn't care about that product because it wasn't marketed in a way that anyone should have cared about it. But when you actually look at card design, like somebody sat down at a desk, worked on those cards, tweaked those cards, play tested those cards, presumably. So like we have to give credit to the card designers, even if we don't necessarily give credit to like Hasbro. Like nobody likes Hasbro, but like you still got to like give some positives to Wizards of the Coast, or at least people within Wizards of the Coast for the things they're creating. So with that out of the way, to address the point that Teld just brought up about trying to give a solution to a problem you created, which, by the way, we just saw this year with the whole play booster thing, you know, trying to solve the issue of set boosters versus draft boosters. Magic is, you know, notorious for doing this. I don't know if you read any of the articles that came out surrounding these announcements, but one of the things that struck me that was really, really weird thing to say was they mentioned the One Ring from Lord of the Rings. Deeply problematic card, super broken, you know, dominant in Modern, dominant in a lot of different formats, played in Legacy, probably ban-worthy in Commander at this point, but also you can't reprint it because of the name of the goddamn card. And like maybe you can reskin it or whatever, but like where are you gonna put that? The card's like $100 a pop. They use this as a justification to standardize these Universes Beyond sets, because I don't have their exact words in front of me, but it was something along the lines of, people feel bad playing against the One Ring because it's not a standard issue set card. So if we make all of these cards standard issue, people won't feel bad as much because it'll have actually come out of a standard set instead of a supplementary set, which, I mean, is that not just like an extremely flawed justification for like standardizing Universes Beyond? Is, oh, we're going to make broken cards, don't worry about it, but they're going to be standard legal now, so you won't feel as bad losing to a card that was meant to be for a different IP and for Eternal formats. Like, what? How is that? That just feels like a cop-out to me, is like you're trying to latch on to any reason to justify, you know, turning Universes Beyond sets into standard sets. Like, I don't know. That just seems like an extremely flawed take on why you would do this. But yeah, the whole creating an issue, and I mean, we're too far in now. Like, they have these sets planned for multiple years ahead of times. Like, they have investors and stuff. They Marvel, the execs at Marvel who are collaborating with Wizards of the Coast have probably signed contracts for X number of sets within the X years. The fact that one of these sets is not called MTG X Marvel but is rather called Marvel Spider-Man, like an entire set devoted to Spider-Man specifically, means that we're going to get so many more Marvel sets. We're going to get X-Men, we're going to get Avengers, we're going to get all that set. Like,
look forward to Hugh Jackman gracing the front of your Commander deck.
Like, I've done my best to avoid Marvel as an IP outside of like the occasional game of Marvel Snap, in which I don't know any of the characters, since like Endgame, and I've just completely detached from all of that, and now I'm getting it forced into my Magic the Gathering, and that just like,
yeah,
there's that was the one that caused the I don't know if even if it's irrational anger, but the sort of just rage that I'm feeling over this one, the like, in terms of, and keep in mind, this is a hobby. I want to preface this too, that like, there's only so upset you can get about your hobby. But as far as being upset about a hobby, for me, this is like an 8 or a 9. Like, this is, you know, the only way, I mean, I might be more upset if they told me Magic was actually just done. But, you know, as far as hobbies go, this is like pretty up there.
It is.
It's, come on, man. Like, why do we have to have Marvel?
Yeah. Well, to touch on something Tim said, like, you know, we're too far gone now. There's an expression my father loves to say that I've never heard anyone else say, and it's like one of my favorite things that he says, which is, you can't put the shit back in the horse. And that's where we're at. We can't stuff the turds back in the horse, people. Like, this is just the situation now. But Tim, I feel like you were like still on a roll, and we cut in on you.
No.
Anything else to say?
I do think another point about this, and I'm, you know, piggybacking off of the conversation about the One Ring, there is there's some sort of contract in place with all of these different IPs where they can't just reprint the cards at will, right? I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the Warhammer 40K cards, which have existed for, I think, 3 years now, and involve, like, that set was a banger as far as like card quality goes. I do not believe they're allowed to put these on Magic Online due to some sort of contractual thing, but like, you could play them in paper, you could play them in Eternal formats and stuff like that. So you create these contracts with these different companies, these different IPs, where you can and can't reprint this here and there. By increasing the number of standard sets that have, you know, that are Universes Beyond, aren't you also creating like X number of cards that can't be reprinted? Like, I guess they have the Universes Within thing where they can do like in Magic universe a version of a card, like they did with the Stranger Things cards and the Street Fighter cards. But then you're doing this confusing thing where you have so many cards that exist in 2 different forms and stuff like that, so it just gets more confusing there. But like, they're creating a little bit of a problem. What if they create another One Ring, which they're gonna do if at some point, like, you can't reprint it. you just can't reprint it because you have this stupid contract in place. You're no longer beholden to your own game. You're beholden to whatever company you've made a deal with to do or not do this. So there's all sorts of like little in between things going on top of like just the bad taste in your mouth with an announcement like this. There's so much going on behind the curtain as well.
I think also there's something in this article I'm reading, the aligning the multiverses or aligning universes, and it really kind of just it irks me, but it feels like it surmises this whole thing. It's like the initial shock of Universes Beyond is well behind us at this point. And then he says some more stuff, and it's like, for those reasons, I'm pleased to fully treat them like and like literally put quotes, real magic sets going forward and letting them be fun for everyone everywhere. We are even acknowledging in this article talking about the Universes Beyond that we know they're not real magic sets. We're just going to
I have a disgusting analogy that I could make that I'm not going to, for the sake of people's stomachs at home. But let's just say that there are activities that humans engage in where you gradually get a person used to something until you can go really extreme with it. And that this is what this feels like, right? Like,
okay, yeah.
And like this is what this feels like, like the early Universes Beyond was just like just the tip, and now we're here. And it's really it's difficult. Like I'm gonna try as best I can to keep like my sociological and economic ideas out of this, because this is not a political show. But I have worked for massive corporations for over 10 years now. And in the last 4 or 5, I have become increasingly involved in enterprises that are in part or totally owned by venture capital. And for those of you that don't know what venture capital is, it's basically a collection of obscenely rich private citizens who buy their way into industries, buy up companies like WotC, buy companies that they don't understand and have no personal or like ethos connection to, and then their entire thing is just exerting pressure on the upper management structure number go up. And so like you referenced earlier, like Mark Rosewater is having to justify all this shit. Like Mark Rosewater is not in control. Like
No.
Hasbro in this case is effectively a VC firm that bought this company they don't give a shit about. And now they like this the announcement, like you were talking about that thing that they said about Universes Beyond, where like we're delighted to now get to treat them as whatever, right? That is them being like having a path dictated to them, and now like they have to make the best rationalization they possibly can. And of course it's going to sound fucking flimsy. Like they don't even believe it.
That was an article that had to be passed by a VP at Hasbro that sent it back asking them to change the language to make it sound like they were excited about what they were doing.
So, and like, okay, so there's a thing that I think about a lot. Like back in the day, you guys know what Bethlehem Steel is. It was a major American steel company with manufacturing centers in Baltimore and other places. Years and years ago, Bethlehem Steel had a CEO who was a steel roller on the line when he was young. And he worked his way up through the company because he was smart. He rolled steel, then he was a clerk, then he was a middle manager. Eventually, he becomes CEO of fucking Bethlehem Steel. And the reason for that is the man knows steel. He cares about the steel industry. He knows what it's like to be a steel worker. And he's the CEO of the fucking company because he understands Bethlehem Steel. And then in the 2000s, basically the board came to him and was like, you need to go get a college degree or you can't be the CEO of this corporation anymore. So he went and nominally got a college degree, but who gives a shit? Like, he knows Bethlehem Steel. He's running it. The company is profitable. He understood the business that he was running, and he had a personal connection to the business he was running. Like, back in the 60s, like, a lot of the people who were on the board at Boeing, they were engineers. Like, Boeing is, like, a really good example because, like, there was the whole counterfeit titanium thing, and then, like, astronauts getting stranded in space, and, like, planes crashing because, like, upper management is constantly pressing the engineers to save money, and the engineers know it's a bad idea. If the board members were fucking engineers, they never would have asked the engineers underneath them to make those concessions. And don't get me wrong, like Boeing was doing all kinds of evil shit in the 1960s, like delivering payloads to like burn Vietnam to the ground. But at least the people who were managing the company were fucking engineers. And what you've seen after decades and decades of just completely rampant, unmitigated acquisitions of companies by other companies, and this mythology that CEOs are such talented people that they deserve to earn $50 million a year, despite the fact that, and I've worked with a lot of them personally, most of them are fucking replaceable, just like anybody else. The entire economic system, and by extension, our cultural manufacturing system, is currently owned by people who don't give a shit about anything other than line go up. Companies are not being run by people who understand what those companies are supposed to do and what they represent to their consumers anymore. And that's why we're here, is the culture and the economy are being run by morally bankrupt people with no fucking ethos, and they are dictating what they think is going to make the maximum amount of money to companies that were frankly already profitable and already employing people, but it's just never enough. And that's why we have Marvel Spider-Man coming to a Magic card near you. Like, Tim, you probably know this better than I do, but like, what was the insane like profit increase dictation that Hasbro made to WotC over the course of like 1 year? They were expected to like double their profitability or something in the span of like 18
every
months.
year.
I actually just looked it up, looked up the article because it was like a big thing that was going around in 2022. There was an article that came out on TCG Player Infinite called "Is Hasbro Killing Their Golden Goose?" And it went around, you know, in waves, and it had a lot of insight into like why we're seeing a lot of the things with secret layers and pushing all these extra products and stuff. It's written by Cassie LaBelle, but it was an excellent piece about why we're seeing the decisions we're seeing in Magic, even though people don't seem to really like them. And, you know, the overall point here was that Hasbro came down to Wizards of the Coast and they want what's called an infinite growth business model, right? Like every year you should be making more money, no matter, like you should never, your dividends should never be less than what happened last year, you know, which is like a fun thing to say. We want to make more money every year, but it's not really like feasible to make infinite.
No,
like,
constant
it's
growth
stupid.
is not sustainable.
Yeah. So I think I don't want to like sit here and read the article on air, but I think what they said is basically every year we want to double what we made the year before. You know, and that's Hasbro coming down to Wizards and not like giving insight in how to do it. They're just like, if you want us to continue to support your company, we need you to go ahead and bring in twice as much as you did last year. Figure it out, you know. So then Wizards of the Coast has to be like, all right, get all the heads together. How are we going to do this? Well, let's release more sets. Let's release more secret layers. Let's just release more product that gets people to buy stuff, and then eventually that bleeds into these universes beyond secret layers did really, really well. People really engaged with the Tomb Raider one and the Street Fighter one and the whatever IP from 15 years ago that people still think is popular, you know, secret layer. And then from there, it's like, okay, you hear their financial reports, right? Like Wizards of the Coast went up $1.6 billion. And it's like, oh shit, they have to do that again next year. So what are they going to do?
Yeah, you can't double forever. Also, it's important to remember that like, I don't even understand how, I'm going to be honest, I don't understand how corporate politics works. But what it needs to be understood is that Hasbro is a company that is sinking, and WotC is their one one profitable venture. So it's like, what are you going to do? Stop supporting Magic because now you'll have zero profitable ventures?
I mean,
I would not be surprised though. What I actually would not be surprised happened if WotC didn't even have a choice in this. I would not be surprised if Hasbro came to them and said, hey, we made contracts with, you know, Square Enix, Marvel, and whatever else were Universe and Beyond. And they said, here you go, make these sets. Good, you know, you're doing this. Like, I would not be surprised if some guy in a suit just made these contract agreements without any sort of input from WotC, and they're just getting told what to do. And that's why I'm trying not to be mad at WotC themselves too much, because like, while I think they do a lot of dumb stuff, I understand a lot of it is outside of their control. And in this case in particular, I would not be surprised if a majority of this is outside of their control.
No, I was going to say Assassin's Creed was like a great example of like how that's probably very true, because look at that set's release cycle. It was like a 120 card set released in a booster pack no one had ever heard about. It wasn't draftable. It wasn't standard legal. It was just like random cards for the sake of making cards, but enough cards that like it felt like it was supposed to at one point be a bigger set. And it was wedged between two standard releases. Like, clearly the people who made the cards liked making the cards, but like Wizards of the Coast did not believe in that product. They just kind of threw it out there and it is gone. Nobody knows anything about Assassin's Creed.
Well, what I was going to say was, you know, Teld, you said, you know, you weren't going to comment on, I feel like maybe I'm paraphrasing, but you weren't really going to offer like a perspective on corporate politics, but like I can. And I keep prefacing what I'm about to say with this. Like, I'm not trying to be political, but working for a bunch of like massive corporate entities has offered me kind of insight into the types of people who run them. Because I have been accountable to and reported to directly like C-suites, which for you corpo folks out there is the basically collection of executives that run a company, right? It's not quite a board. Like a board can be a separate thing, but the C-suite is like the CEO, the CFO, the CAO, the CTO. that collection of people. And the reality of corporate politics is that you don't get to run a massive commercial entity like this unless you are fucking ruthless. You are willing to throw other people under the bus to further your own career, and you have the utmost complete confidence in your own ability to make the right decisions regardless of the fallout that it has for anyone else. Like that is the nature of massive organizations, and it's the nature of governments too. Ultimately, is when you create, the larger a power structure you create, the more psychotic the people who are ruthless enough to rise to the top and run it are, which creates this anti-humanist, anti-artistic behavior when you're talking about corporations and entities that manufacture culture. Like these game companies that are successful, they're not run by gamers. They're not run by gamers. They're probably run by people who think that gamers are fucking nerds, which we are. But like
derogatorily.
The larger power structure you create, the worse the people who are fit to cut their way to the top are to run it, essentially. And that's what you're seeing here. Like as entities become more and more concentrated and more things get merged together. Think of it this way: if you have two power structures and they merge and they have double the influence over a particular situation, economic activity, whatever. Once upon a time, there were two ruthless bastards who were fighting over who would run each of those organizations. And now you have two of these types of people, and there's only one top spot. And they're going to go to war with one another. That's what's going to happen. And also what happens, and I've seen this countless times, again, like working with C-suites, is once they get into these positions of power, they're essentially isolated against being punished for their mistakes. Like, I was working for a company, which I will not name, and a director of a department initiated a project that cost the company literally hundreds of millions of dollars that ultimately failed. But by the time it failed, that person had been promoted to an even more important executive role, and they essentially took none of the responsibility for the failure of the project because they were already out the fucking door. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but basically what you are seeing out of Magic right now is a shift in the executive culture of large commercial entities over the past 30 years to something that's completely nihilistic and like lacks an ethos and rewards the worst types of people that you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Teld, did you have anything to follow up with that? Because I wanted to bring the conversation in a slightly different direction from there.
Yeah, no, I'm good if you want to move on the conversation a little bit.
Well, I wanted to like flip this over and play devil's advocate for a second, right? Because obviously none of us like what's happening right now, at least with what's going on in 2025. But there is an argument on the other side of the coin here that, Magic's 30 years old, right? How many Magic cards exist? I don't know, 40,000, 50,000 Magic cards. Like, that's kind of a dart at a dartboard number, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty close. And I mean, how much in IP, like how much in universe, like depth is there to a game that's been around for 30 years? Like I'm always of the opinion that Magic has to find ways to evolve and adapt and, continue past its 30-year lifespan. And like, it feels like they touched on Universes Beyond as a way to do that. Because I mean, think about sets, like it's easy to say, oh, I wish every new set was like a new plane or a return visit. Like, we get excited for the new sets, or the new planes, right? Duskmourn came out. I think I mentioned Duskmourn was, like, something I was interested in because it was a new plane, and those tend to be the ones that I gravitate towards. But look at a set like Theros Beyond Death. Came out in, like, 2021. Theros, the original Theros, one of my favorite sets. I already mentioned that this episode. Theros Beyond Death didn't really hit. It was a return visit. It rehashed a lot of the same stuff that we saw in 2014, and then Wilds of Eldraine comes out in 2023. Doesn't really feel like it needed to exist with, the Throne of Eldraine kind of covering a lot of the fairy tale Arthurian legend stuff that you would expect in a plane like that. So, like, the return visits don't hit quite as well. I mean, Innistrad, Crimson Vow, and what was the other one? Midnight Hunt? Those were just, like, very blah and forgettable as far as, like, the Innistrad flavor goes, because we'd already been on Innistrad for 5 other sets before that. So the return visits aren't quite hitting the same. But how much depth is there to constantly create new planes at the rate that they have to create sets, right? Like, at some point you have to do something creatively to make Magic continue to feel fresh and continue to, extend past its 30-year lifespan. Is Universes Beyond, like, is there a way that can be handled well to kind of fill in the gap? Or do you think, like, Magic actually has the creative depth to continue to, like, come up with new planes and, make fresh return visits and stuff like that? Because I think we've seen, like, a fatigue of, like, return visits and new planes not really feeling like they're doing anything unique, like Thunder Junction and stuff like that. So I don't know, that's the devil's advocate side of the argument, is that Universes Beyond is giving Magic, like, a way to extend its lifespan, in a creative direction, whether people like it or not. I don't know that I agree that is, like, the only direction they could have taken, but clearly it, like, eases some of the necessity to constantly create something new from the design perspective, right? It gives them something to build off of, instead of, oh, we have to come up with 6 new planes this year, or we have to, figure out how to drive the story of Tarkir moving forward in a way that people are going to like, but still make it feel fresh. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Like, it is, I guess what I'm asking is there a way to, like, weave Universes Beyond into Magic in a way that, like, makes sense? I guess my answer would just be, like, don't make it standard legal, but then you have to still you still have to fill those standard sets in. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my feelings on this is largely I'm bothered by Universes Beyond. I think they should be more creative. You have a literal infinite multiverse. You can come up with any sort of new thing, even if it references, like I mentioned earlier, you could make a superhero plane. You could do all these different things. You could make worlds that are, like, inspired by other products if you wanted. That's fine. I have a problem with the sort of direct homogenization, direct transposition of things into the Magic IP. That being said, if they were going to do it, I think if you wanted to do this appropriately, first of all, they should not be 3 Universe Beyond sets per year. If they wanted to do 1 or 2, it's like, fine, whatever, let's, But the second thing, too, is that I think they need to not be Marvel, and they don't need to be comic-y. They don't need to be these, like, SpongeBob. Like, I know we're not getting an actual SpongeBob Universe Beyond yet.
Yeah.
But these are things that I have a serious issue with. If it was mostly stuff where it was like, okay, we're gonna do another Baldur's Gate set, and we're gonna do a Dark Souls set, we're gonna do a Final Fantasy set, we're gonna do these sort of sets that, like, it's like, okay, these are sets that at least have some sort of, like, thematic resonance there. But just, like, what are we gonna do when we actually get Universes Beyond SpongeBob or Universes Beyond My Little Pony, and, like, you have an actual standard set that's like that?
I do, just before the listener starts commenting on that, we know those two things actually exist, but as he's talking about, like, a full-on standard set, like the SpongeBob secret lair is just a secret lair, and the My Little Pony stuff is just secret lairs. It's funny you just randomly name My Little Pony, and it's like, yeah, that already exists in Magic. We already did that.
Earlier, I was actually going to say that about Assassin's Creed. I was going to be like, when are they going to do, like, Assassin's Creed, for example? And then I was like, oh yeah, they already did.
You're going to want to sit down for this one, because
yeah, I think I don't really have any doubt that these sets will be good, because Magic sets in general, like, for all the complaining we do, we are in a golden age of limited. Like, every limited set, even the ones that are bad, like Bloomburrow, are still better than most of the sets that came out 10 years ago. They don't really have hard misses anymore. It's more, did you enjoy the particular play patterns of this retail environment? So I expect these sets will play well. I expect I'll probably be less salty about it once I've, played my Spider-Man aggro deck in limited 10 times or whatever. I just don't want to draft it. Like, I don't want to play it. I just don't.
Yeah, it's like, if I'm playing with Spider-Man cards, why wouldn't I just play Marvel Snap? Like, why wouldn't I play a Marvel IP game? Okay, Devil's Advocate hat's still on here. I think it is very clear that these Universes Beyond things do bring new players to Magic. Otherwise, like, somebody out there is buying this stuff. And, like, I know quite a few people that I've played Commander with recently who are like, oh, I got back in the game because of the Lord of the Rings set, and I love Lord of the Rings. And it's like, okay, that's, like, it's kind of cool. I will say the Lord of the Rings people are usually pretty chill. Marvel people are, like, the most toxic people you can get. So, like, is it...
Are they really? I didn't know that.
Oh, Marvel's worst enemy is its fans, because they just, like, will not... Like, anyway, like, I'm not going to go down the Marvel hole there, but...
I don't think appealing to everyone is even a good strategy, to be honest, because this is kind of it's better to be loved by some people than have everybody kind of just be blah about your product. And I think that in the constant outreach of trying to get every conceivable person to get into Magic. They're really diluting the thematic qualities that I like about Magic personally. Like, this is just, I don't know. I like Magic's particular fantasy aesthetic. I happen to like it even when it's goofy sets. Like, I really enjoy it. I loved Thunder Junction, actually. I thought even the aesthetics on that set ruled. I really liked it. I tend to enjoy, and like, I won't even lie, Dustmourn's grown on me. Like, Dustmourn is, it's still silly. There's still a lot of dudes in hallways and all that, but it definitely, having played with it, like, it does have its own flavor that feels in part distinctly Magic until, you know, somebody shows up with like a Ghostbuster vacuum. You know, but like the monsters and stuff that you play with, the various creatures and stuff, they all kind of vibe. Like, they kind of fit in. And maybe that's just, you know, Stockholm syndrome of the fact that the set's pretty good and I've played it a bunch. But, you know, these things, I think it has its own flavor, and I don't think you get to do that. You're so much more restricted in what you can do, even mechanically, right? Like, we know there's only so many various effects certain cards are going to be able to have, because they need to have some sort of specific iconic feature about them that ties them to their IP, right? It's like the Captain America card wasn't going to have any, it had to have something to do with throwing the shield. That's the thing, right? And I'm sure that Spider-Man will have something to do with, you know, slinging webs or something. I don't know, it'll stun counter people or something.
Yeah, that's actually almost certainly exactly what it's going to do.
Well, have you seen the Storm card? The teamer?
No.
No.
Do you want to guess what it does?
It does lightning bolts. It makes lightning bolts, doesn't it?
If it hits someone, it gives one of your spells Storm.
Oh, that's even sillier than what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb. Tim, I wanna go back for a second and touch on, I guess, your original question before I lose the thread, which was, is the pace of generating interesting and new planes and fantasies like sustainable? And is that a reason to bring in Universes Beyond to keep Magic fresh?
Right.
I think there's a couple things at play here. First of all, if you weren't forcing your designers and creative teams to do 6 sets a year, maybe some of that labor could be put towards creating, you know, interesting and unique planes. That's thing number fucking one. I mean, that's a little like facile, because like the people who design cards for the predefined universes are not necessarily going to be the type of creatives that like imagine new planes. But you take my point. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is, I got back into Magic as an adult when Arena was still in beta. Part of this, too, is, like, the impact that, like, COVID had on the way that the economy works, with everybody, like, being pushed out of social spaces, and then especially, again, like, commenting on Gen Z as, like, a boomer as fuck millennial, but, like, I feel bad for them insofar as, like, COVID slapped us in the face around the time that, like, you're supposed to be like out in social spaces for the first time as like a free adult, and like developing your identity, figuring out how to like talk to the people you want to go home with, socializing, playing games, making new friends, etc. So Arena kind of came into being at like the perfect time when like more and more young people were being socialized to like not really leave their houses as much. And where I'm going with this is, like, when I first got back into Magic, like, I probably drafted Ixalan, because that was the set that was out when I started playing Magic again. I probably drafted Ixalan maybe, like, 10 or 11 times. Because I was doing that at FNMs, and I only got to do it, like, once a week. Mm-hmm. And there are, you know, it is very possible to play, like, 12 Swisses in a limited format over a weekend if you don't really have anything else to do, like, in a weekend. Right, so like set fatigue, and this is happening like across the economy too. It doesn't really matter what you're talking about, but like the gratification loop is becoming so much shorter because things can be delivered to you so instantaneously, and you can binge on them until you're tired of them, like television shows or whatever. Part of the reason that they're probably, you know, being pressured to produce more content is like you can consume way more playing Magic than you used to be able to, right? So, like, set fatigue sets in a lot faster. Like, I guarantee you, if you look at their data, the number of people playing any given limited format probably falls off, like, way harder, way faster as a percentage than when it was in paper, because you can just burn yourself out on it faster.
Well, the fact that they're also doing a spreadsheet kind of thing is probably also contributing to that to a certain extent. Sets feel not the same, but they do have a similar vibe to them. And like I drafted ZNR and Neo probably north of 40 times each, and I can't imagine doing that with a set again. Like even sets I've really enjoyed, I cap out at about 20, and then I'm like, or 30, and I'm like, okay, I've had enough of this set now.
Right. And once upon a time, drafting a set 30 times would have been like a feat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
In
KTK
paper.
up until recently, KTK I would have said was my favorite set of all time, and I probably drafted that set, I don't know, 10 times at FNM or whatever, like 10, maybe
Right.
a little more, but you drafted once, maybe twice a week if you were lucky. I do agree with you. I think that this sort of 6 standard sets per year is partly a result of the 17 lands era of Arena, where, we're really just, by the end of this 8 weeks, I imagine you're just ready for a new set. That being said, it also is going to create a lot of problems with just moving forward with the podcast and with the sort of hype machine that exists. Like, we're going to have less time consistently, because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there used to only be like 4 sets a year, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was 4 plus core set. It was like standardized as 5 sets a year.
Okay, yeah. And then just adding an extra set just really cuts into the amount of time we have to test any individual cards before the new ones come out. We've seen just with this last year how much, even in set to set, some of our cards are getting power crept. It feels like every set there's some new must-play banger.
Well, I mentioned, just to piggyback off that, and then Chris, if you want to get back to that point, if you had something else to add, like I mentioned recently in chat to a couple people, Limited Resources. One of my I listen to every episode of Limited Resources I have, but they do not do level up episodes anymore. They have no room to do episodes about anything interesting that isn't related to whatever the current standard set is, because as soon as they get even remotely into the weeds about whatever the latest set was, it is now time to do, their Sunset show and then their limited reviews for the next set, because it's just coming out so quickly. So, and that's not a knock against Limited Resources so much as like, that's just the way sets have accelerated. Once we added that 6th set in, which I think started around like Crimson Vow, Midnight Hunt, when they jammed like 2 sets back to back within like a month and a half's time, like it's been 6 sets moving forward since then, and like people have felt the fatigue ever since. Like it's pervasive, and like I don't see them going back on it. There's no way they're going to go back on it. In fact, I would imagine a world where they go forward and they're like 7 sets this year. So,
and one of the worst parts about this too is it usually takes, with modern limited sets, it usually takes a couple of weeks for things to kind of even out, because the first week your limited grinders, like our Discord always figures out something busted. It's usually Boros, but not always. And like just gets a million trophies doing that, and it takes a little while before the rest of the Magic population catches up. They watch their episodes of whatever, and you finally start getting these more competitive drafts where you get to do the fun, cool build around, and you get to do the blue control decks because you know what you're trying to control against and all that sort of thing. And I feel like with this sort of advanced cycle that we're in, it just, you get less of that time when formats get really, really sweet. I don't like drafting I don't like getting to get a bunch of 7-0 decks because my opponents just didn't read the card and realize Valgavat's Onslaught is broken. Like, that doesn't feel, that happens in week 1, and I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy my opponents just be like, all right, here's a 5th pick Shelter by Ghost or whatever,
Well, you're cramming so much of a new Magic draft set's life cycle in the first week of that set coming out, but the set doesn't actually like even out until week 3.
Yeah.
where people know what's up and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel that sentiment for sure. Yeah,
I'm also worried just in terms of cubing, just how much power, because with these universes beyond, they say that, because they're like, we're going to put them into standards so that we can test them and stuff, but like, they're not going to not have these really, really busted iconic cards, right? Like, we all know Cloud's going to be broken, right? We could just accept that here. Like, Cloud's going to be like, Cloud or Sephiroth is going to be the best card in the set.
Oh, and I'm willing to bet they're not even going to print a Squall card, which is going to piss me off.
Well, do you remember the best card to come out of Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, the One Ring and Orcish Bowmasters.
Orcish Bowmasters. It wasn't even
the most, so generic, and it like didn't even look like Uruk-hai. It was just like 2 dudes. Like,
just
it could
2
have been
dudes
printed
with
in any
those,
set. Two dudes.
The point there being that like, these are just going to be strong set. Like, there's no power discrepancy. In fact, they're probably going to be better to try and get people to play these cards.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, you just said something I want to comment on. So, like, they keep saying this thing over and over again. Like, it's not everything is for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I accept that to a degree. However, like, and we haven't really related this back to Cube as much. This is more like a general commentary on the direction of the game. But when it comes to Cube, what's frustrating about it is because they keep they keep printing these like weird non-magic cards, and then they're doing the thing that you just described, which is they're making them so strong that you can't ignore them. And then like basically what they're doing to a certain extent, and I think it's going to be worse on a go forward, is like if you're a cube curator that doesn't want your cube to be like Marvel Snap or whatever in like 5 years, they're going to force you to sort of make, and maybe this is the advantage of cube over other Magic formats, is like it gets to be a museum now of a game that's like dying, not in terms of its ability to make money, but in its ethos. They can say like it's not for you all they want, but they keep waving it around in our faces.
Well, I mean, imagine sitting down to a vintage cube draft on Moto 2 years from now, and like they're not gonna not play the best cards from these Marvel properties and stuff. So like if you were a vintage cube enthusiast for the past 10 years, like you're gonna have to sit down and play Spider-Man and Rhino and Vulture and whatever the hell else is in. I don't know Spider-Man
you are.
that well.
You're right. And because the fair cards that they have been printing in the last like 5 years are so powerful that like there are classic vintage cube strategies that aren't like, oh, this is the most broken thing you can do in Magic anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
well, the best thing you can do in vintage cube is like fourth Orlingus now. It's, you know.
yeah, exactly. And I mean that is what it is, I guess. But like, it's a commentary on the evolution of the game that like their broken design mistakes from the beginning when they didn't know what they were doing, like those strategies aren't necessarily more attractive than like curve out strategies in vintage cube now. So it's like vintage cube is becoming like, if you curate your own vintage cube, you almost have to make a decision now where you're like, okay, like, am I maxing power in this cube? And it turns out like, oh, they're just gonna print like a 2-mana 4/5 with like first strike, haste, and lifelink that like also makes your opponent skip their draw step or whatever. Yeah, it's like undermining the very notion of like what is powerful. And like you said, like there are gonna be vintage cube enthusiasts that are just like, I mean, I guess I have to play fucking. Because, you know, in the Spider-Man set, they're going to print, like, a card for, like, every version of Spider-Man that's ever existed.
Spider-Pig. We're going to get a Spider-Pig card.
We're going to get a
Spider-Ham. We're going to get Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Ham.
We're going to get the Spider Armor Spider-Man, where he's got the Scarlet... We're going to get Scarlet Spider and all these other 30... Miles Morales Spider-Man. You know, we'll get 30 different variations of it.
We got 5 Gandalfs in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, we're over under at least 5 Spider-Mans. But my problem, too, is that this universe, if you're anti-Universes Beyond, which I generally consider myself in the, like, it's kind of like where I'm about Alchemy, where I'm not, like, completely opposed to some Universes Beyond, but I don't like how they've done it. And I definitely don't like 3 of my standard sets per year being Universes Beyond. So if you're trying to avoid that, though, say you have a harder line in the sand, they're telling you half of their products that they release now are not for you. They're literally trying to shove, if you like Magic as an IP, they are telling you half of the game is not for you. They are shoving you out. And I just have a real problem with that. That feels wrong. That feels like you are saying, I would rather have whatever stupid Marvel nerds want. Sorry, I don't actually hate Marvel, just the Spider-Man thing has me riled up. But whatever Marvel nerds they want to get, they would rather have those than enfranchised and entrenched Magic players. And it's really annoying. I'm open to the game growing. I'm open to the game continuing to find new people who want to play Magic, but I don't just want to get people who are here because they had whatever cool IP, you know, and that's what they're playing for, because they're going to demand more of that, right? If you're here for Marvel, go play Marvel. Look, I play Marvel Snap. It's an awesome game. It's a great mobile game.
They also drop off after a while. I mean, do you guys remember Doctor Who? Of course you don't fucking remember Doctor Who.
No.
Doctor Who Commander decks came out in 2023, and I play at my local game store. I play Commander like twice a month-ish, and we saw people come in. They're like, oh, I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I'm trying to learn Magic, blah, blah, blah. They play for a couple months, and they drop off because there's no more Doctor Who stuff. So it's like, yeah, you got people in the door, but do they stick around? And now we have to, like, play with what's-his-face, that British actor that everyone likes. I don't know. But
Benedict Cumberbundy.
Yeah, can you imagine like they're gonna, because like the Marvel thing too, the Marvel train doesn't stop. There are an infinite number of Marvel and DC IPs that they can keep drip feeding these comic nerds who want to come in and they can and like imagine what you're gonna feel like in Standard when there's like 5 sets of comic book characters floating around in your Magic world.
Oh Jesus, we're gonna get the Punisher on a Magic card, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Like, It might be its own set. The Punisher.
Trying to buy their way into that thin blue line market.
Frank Castle, black and white, 2/2, tap, tutor target gun. I don't know.
I really don't like this. This is just
Can we just for a moment 6 sets next year, 3 of them Universes Beyond, one of which we don't even know, which my guess is that it's just another Marvel set that's following up Spider-Man.
We get at least one comic book set. It's got to be at least 10 years old. We're not getting a Elden Ring FromSoft set for at least 3 or 4 years.
It has to be something that people don't care about anymore. Can we talk about the 3 in universe sets that we're actually getting too? Like, Chris, do you know the sets that are coming out next year?
I perused it. So we're getting like Magic Does Speed Racer.
Yes, so we're getting Ether Drift.
Magic F-Zero edition.
Yeah, which actually I would be a lot more excited if this was just purely based in Kaladesh, because I actually think that there are a lot of like planes in Magic's history where it's like, oh, what if Magic happened in like on Mount Olympus or whatever? And Kaladesh is kind of like that. Like, it's just doing sort of like Indian aesthetics. But Kaladesh was really sweet insofar as like somebody was like, what if we combined like classic Indian aesthetics with like steampunk? And it's sick. Like, it's a sick cultural hybrid. It's so cool. So like just do Kaladesh Reloaded is my perspective, and then what is Edge of Eternities? Like Magic goes to space.
What if Death Race was Chandra has to like you could tie, I don't know how the plot would go, but like Chandra has to race across Kaladesh to save her mom or whatever. I don't know. Like you could have the same like sort of Death Race vibe, just have it set on Kaladesh so that it's thematically cohesive. This whole like 3 plane set just feels like another like we have to have the whole
well, it's Thunder Junction all over again. It's we're doing this so that we can have a crossover set where we bring in a bunch of characters that you recognize from other sets, and they're all going to be here. You're going to have Duretti on a speed bike, like Duretti on a motorcycle. It's like, haha, they're doing the Thunder Junction thing again. So like, my point here is like 3 Universes Beyond sets, 3 Magic sets. Ether Drift is like a super gimmick, and people, I can already tell you people are going to hate it, even though like I'm kind of like, okay, sure, whatever. I do agree. Could have just been served as like Jesus. Speed Racer on Kaladesh would have been just like a nice return visit to Kaladesh, but the second set is a return to Tarkir. I think it's called Tarkir Dragonstorm. The art looks terrible, but I mean, Tarkir,
does it really? I haven't seen any of it.
It's like really digital art, like super digital art for the showcase art. But
very AI. It looks like it was AI assisted for 2 of the 3 pieces that they showed. Yeah, and also they haven't made it clear. They kind of hinted that we're going to get the clans return, but also there's going to be it's going to be a dragon heavy set, so it isn't clear as if they're really trying to go back and hit the like. It's weird that we haven't been to Tarkir so long, but I think they recognize that they made such a mistake with removing the clan structure from Tarkir that they just haven't wanted to touch it for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Tarkir one is like a return visit, and it's like it has the potential to be great, has the potential to be a flop, as I mentioned earlier with return visits. And then the third one is the Edge of Eternities, which thematically it takes place like right on the edge of the Blind Eternities, which is a Magic thing. But if you look at the set, like if you look at the art with like Jesus Tezzeret blowing up planets in space, which is super badass, like that piece of art is awesome, but like it doesn't look like a Magic set. Like it doesn't look like what you would think when you think of Magic set. So 6 sets next year, 3 of them not Magic related at all. One of them is straight up return visit. The other one is another like multiversal gimmick set, which they just keep doing, like March of the Machine style, not Oath of the Gatewatch, Thunder Junction style. And then the third one is like a space set, like which doesn't feel very so there's nothing next year outside of the Tarkir visit that feels like a fresh Magic set, like feels like a Magic set. And the one set that actually feels like that is a return visit. So like next year, you're going to get through the first half of the year, and if you're not a Universes Beyond like enthusiast, or at least someone who like accepts Universes Beyond for what it is, you have nothing for the second half of next year to look forward to. Like nothing at all, except non-Magic IP stuff for 6 months straight. And we know the first set of 2026 is a revisit to Lorwyn, but it's a revisit. It's another revisit. Like the revisits just do not hit the same. So like you're talking about from now from the release of Foundations in a couple weeks until mid 2026, you will not get something that feels distinctly fresh for Magic the Gathering, except maybe Edges of Eternity if they pull that off like in some sort of like acceptable fashion.
Yeah, it also needs to be mentioned the Lorwyn set got pushed back because of the Universe Beyond resets, right?
Yeah.
Like we were supposed to get Lorwyn next year.
I'm looking at this Dragon of Tarkir, Tarkir Dragonstorm, like
the art looks terrible.
Art. Well, there's like this monk that looks very digital, but like what's even more upsetting about it is like the background stairs were like clearly created by like an AI prompt, and they look like the stairs from like 1998's like or 1996's like Mist.
And that's the art you're like, using to showcase this set.
yeah, it looks like the stairs look like they're from like a really bad like early concept VR game from like 1998.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The only piece of art that I liked of the ones that they showed was there's this one where it's like a bunch of people look like Temur mages in like a circle, and they're kind of summoning this thing, and that one looks okay. Yeah. I think it's got like a nice Temur palette to it, and it doesn't look super AI, but the monk with like the flaming hands and the Clash one, just straight up AI prompt art.
Yeah, this is like part of what upsets me about this is it's kind of emblematic of what I think is going on in like the broader culture. And again, as somebody who's worked for a lot of like massive corporations, like I've seen this up front. More money than ever is being extracted from products, but like that's not enough. In addition to that, like costs have to also be cut. Like margins are never good enough. They're never good enough, right? Like, and when you like it, you're cursed because if you make a lot of money like in 1 year, the investors are going to be like, well, you've proven that you can do that, so like you better do it again, or we're going to divest ourselves from this enterprise. It's never good enough. So like the reason I'm bringing that up with this AI art is Magic as a game is making more money than it ever has, like exponentially, but they don't have enough money to like pay artists to like draw stairs. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Chris, you see, there's actually two ways to increase profits. You can increase revenue, or you can decrease costs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a pricing analyst for a living, and, like, I'm seeing this in real time. It's just like, okay, well, and it especially happened, like, over the course of COVID when all that money got pumped into the economy. There were supply chain disruptions, yada, yada, yada. Like, we don't need to litigate, like, the reasons that inflation happened. But I'm telling you guys, like, like peek behind the curtain if you've never worked for a massive company. Like, when I was a pricing analyst, like, I was pressured to increase prices beyond what was dictated by inflationary cost, pass it off as a function of inflationary cost because it partially was, while we simultaneously started sourcing cheaper shit. Like, everything got more expensive. People's perceptions of what they were getting for their money plummeted, but they don't have anywhere else to go to buy these products, and just more and more and more capital is being harvested from things that people are not too stupid to realize are getting cheaper and worse. And it doesn't have to be like this. Like that basically my entire worldview can be summed up as it doesn't have to be like this.
It doesn't. But the shit's out of the horse, so
you can't put the shit back in the horse.
I mean, once I am like Magic's kind of like in a lot of ways defines a lot of my life, which I know sounds sad, but like my whole work related thing is like it's a lot of the aspects of my life revolve around Magic. But once Magic makes the switch, once they come out and say we're switching to AI digital art, which is going to happen eventually. Like, I know they fought against it a little bit, and I know there's AI creeping into different art pieces here and there, and they've had like backlash about that. But once they make the announcement that they're accepting that and that's going to be something moving forward, I think that is my actual literal jumping off point for Magic the Gathering, because I don't want to get into the details, but I do not accept AI art as a functional form of artistry. Like, it's not.
It has no soul. Like, dude, it's creeping. It's not only creeping into like art like this. I don't know if you guys have read about this, but there's a lot of labor organizing that is going on in the television and film writing space right now. because like that is actually in like England, for example, like that's being gigafied. Like a lot of companies that write like or like a lot of firms that write like BBC television comedies, they have basically scabbed people out where they're like hiring people who aren't as good at the job for like significantly less money. And then one of the things that's happening in the United States, and this is something that like there's labor organization around right now because everybody sees where this is going. What some companies are starting to do is they are taking scenes that have been like written for them, like generic romance scene, right? From like generic shitty, sitcom or whatever. And what they're doing is they're taking these scenes that they own, these like pieces of writing that they own, and they're feeding them into large language models. So let's say that they get like 200 like shitty, like, oh, the characters that you wanted to bone are finally boning or whatever, like scene from like a couple different shows. They've figured out that they can like put them into these large language AI models and then just like push a button and it like blends them together to give you like marginally different versions of the same scene at the push of a button, so they don't have to pay somebody to write it. And I mean, ultimately what this comes down to, in my opinion, is like us as consumers. Because what's going on is as people grow up in increasingly shoddily manufactured and artificially manufactured cultures, that is their sort of standard for what's acceptable. And then as time progresses, you can like progressively degrade people's expectations and then make things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And I think that's kind of where we're going. Is if I was gonna get anything, like I've basically been like hate vomiting for the last however long we've been talking, but if I can like offer some perspective or like a call to action, and I don't just mean like for Magic, I'm talking about like the consumption of products and culture in general. Like vote with your dollar. Like we don't have to accept this shit. We don't. And like on the one hand, Magic is deeply, deeply important to people, and I think that they realize that they have like a hostage audience. That's like, for better or for worse, there are people whose like social and recreational lives completely revolve around this game. And telling those people like you should stop giving WotC money is going to be a difficult proposition because they're so invested. This is like what their deal is.
Mm-hmm.
But like you don't have to go see the fourth Marvel movie that they made this year. Like you don't have to go watch like Jigglypuff like Star Wars crossover or whatever. Like you don't have to give these fucking people your money. So unfortunately, I think the reason that this is happening, and this could be part of like a 2-hour diatribe I could do about the internet that I'm not going to do, but it used to be that you couldn't like algorithmically figure out like what the cheapest sugary bullshit you could possibly manufacture, like had the best profit margin. You couldn't do that. So like artists would have to come to executives and like pitch an idea. And then the executive would be like, okay, if you think you can make money doing that, like, let's do it. But it was like sort of guesswork, right? So you got some bad shit, but then you got some really brilliant shit as well. But now in the era of big data, like, and I realize this is going to make me sound like a shitty person, but like most humans are not discerning in their tastes. I'll put it that way, right? And you can see it in pop music, you can see it in art, you can see it in all this shit. And once you take like the artist as the proposer of culture out of the equation and it becomes the executive, like data-driven financial, like proposal of culture model, like what ends up happening is like people get into interesting shit because interesting shit is made and they're like, oh, I liked that. Maybe I can dig in a little bit more on this interesting shit that I got exposed to. But at the same time, like most people are not, culturally speaking, like seekers. So if all you manufacture for them is crap, then they're just going to keep consuming crap, and they're not going to consider that there is an alternative possibility that's not crap. And I guess what I'm saying is like people, it's like boiling a frog. It's like the boiling of the frog thing. Like the culture that is being presented for people to consume is getting worse, so their expectation of the culture they consume is getting lower, which is just going to prompt like an increasingly frustrating race to the bottom. And I'm seeing that across the spectrum, and we're seeing it in Magic the Gathering.
Okay, I hear you on that, but let me propose an alternative. Shadow the Hedgehog crossover with a gun. You know, we'll get the straight up edgy emo Shadow the Hedgehog. It'll be great. Yeah. We'll move right into the Futurama set where we'll get, you know, Bender as the premier threat in the format. It's gonna.
I wish I could take these as jokes, but I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog universes beyond when? Like when? It's not even a matter of if anymore. It's just when for anything that's even remotely popular or was 10 years ago. I guess we should probably like work on winding this conversation down. I wanted to one thing I wanted to do real quick before like kind of wrapping up thoughts, and I don't have much else to say that hasn't been said already, but I looked up just out of curiosity, because I wasn't sure. I looked up all of the Universes Beyond products that exist in Magic already, and it is absurd. And mind you, the first the Walking Dead was the first Universes Beyond thing to come out in 2020, 4 years ago. And since then, you ready for this? All right, I'm going to go down the list. The Walking Dead, Stranger Things, Arcane, Street Fighter, Fortnite, Warhammer 40k, Transformers, Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, Creepshow, Doctor Who, Evil Dead, the fucking Princess Bride, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, Tomb Raider, Clue, Fallout, Hatsune Miku, Assassin's Creed, Monty Python, Ghostbusters, fucking Child's Play is in here somehow, Chucky, I don't know when that happened, and then, of course, we have Marvel, Final Fantasy, and SpongeBob SquarePants coming out.
Jesus,
that's insane.
That's all since 2020. Insane. Majority of that being the only main set out of all of that up to this point was Lord of the Rings. So you could ignore everything else I just said, except for Lord of the Rings, which you literally cannot ignore because of how powerful some of the cards are. And now we are going to see this at an accelerated pace, and we're going to see it in every facet of Magic, not just like Commander or, you know, for collectors and stuff. It is going to be a backbone of Standard, which means a backbone of Magic the Gathering moving forward. I'm sorry. There's also stuff like Dracula and Godzilla in there that aren't technically universes.
Yeah, I was about to say that doesn't even include the like alternative versions of cards from main sets that are from other IPs.
I don't really know what you're supposed to do because I have a serious problem with this, but we're also curators who are supposed to like take a look at sets and review them and stuff. And I just, maybe my mind will be changed in 6 months or 8 months or whatever, whenever we get there. But I just don't want to review a set with like a bunch of Spider-Man cards and like random villains.
No, I think what's going to happen for us, the three of us here in some varying degree, is we're going to be waxing and waning, right? Instead of kind of having a steady through line of like general excitement or, you know, interest in new sets coming out, there's going to be like peaks where it's like, oh, Final Fantasy is a thing I'm interested in, followed by like complete drop-offs where it's like, okay, I don't give a shit about Spider-Man, like, and like there's gonna be 3-month periods where we just don't engage with whatever the new Magic set is. I could see that happening for myself. Like I'm invested enough that like I will still play a Spider-Man limited set if the gameplay is good, but my excitement level will be much lower than something like Final Fantasy, or even much lower than, you know, something like Duskmourn, which is an in-universe thing, which is why I came to Magic in the first place. So that's my final thoughts on the whole thing. Not a fan of the change, not really a fan of the lineup for 2025 in general, even including the in-universe Magic stuff. So we'll see where this goes, but
well, hey, we got Bloomburrow, you know, so that's gonna have to tide us over like a camel in the desert for a while.
Bloomburrow was a hit, and if I recall my own words correctly, I said it was the last frontier of good Magic creative design. I believe I said that during one of the reviews.
Once again, being prophetic.
So yeah, I have no final thoughts beyond just like this being a distasteful change for Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted to wrap up with, but
yeah, the last thing that I wanted to say is I want to just touching back on the like this isn't for you, not everything has to be for you thing. I think the reason that like a large number of us find this like fundamentally insulting is, and this is gonna sound boomer as fuck, but like our dedication to this game and our love of this game and our money built this monster into what it is today, and now they're basically like shitting in our hand. Like that's really what it is. It's like you guys are where you are today because of your dedicated fan base that love this thing for what it is, and I guess now we've like created enough of a platform to you to just be a massive culturally insipid cash grab. like our money, like the people who work at this company built this company. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but like we had to consume it. And like I bought my first pack of Magic cards back in 1997. Like our money built this thing, and then a bunch of suits bought it, and they're just cheapening what it is. And I think that's why so many of us are pissed. And it's also the recognition that like Magic has brought in enough new consumers since the advent of Arena that like they don't have to give a shit about what we think to maximize their profits. And it just kind of feels like you're being spit on a little bit. I realize that sounds extreme, but that's what it feels like. It's like, thanks for your money. We're going to do this other thing now.
I don't think you're alone in feeling that way either.
Yep.
Teld, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I'm good. This conversation's been really draining. Like usually I leave these episodes and I'm like, oh, this was a good talk. And it's like, yeah, it was nice to get this off our chest, but I'm just,
yeah.
Spider Ham's about to be your most drafted uncommon. Like, you know.
I know. And then, yeah, we'll get those web shooters going, and it'll be a great Stoneforge target, I'm sure.
Come cube with us. We're not always this negative.
That's enough ranting for one episode, but this is like one of the biggest, issues. I use that word not lightly. I use it as an actual definitional use of the word issue. Yeah, we are actually interested in what other people think about this, because a lot of it is, the Twitter spheres and stuff like that, and, our own little echo chamber here in Jank Diver Gaming, where people are just generally negative towards Universes Beyond, Alchemy, stuff like that. Like anything that's like change, but this feels like drastic change in the wrong direction. And if that's coming from me, like, okay, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I'm generally very positive about things. If that's coming from me, like, that should be your sign that, whoa, hold on, slow down a minute. There's something wrong going on here. But we will be back with more Cube-related content in another episode. But we felt like this was really important. By the time this goes up, I think this is going up maybe about a month after we're actually recording it right now. So, like, maybe things have hammered out. Maybe there's some changes. Maybe there's more insights. But just note that we recorded this about a month ago from when you're listening. But that also means we have gotten our Foundations review underway, so I can't say the next episode is going to be Foundations. I have to be a little forward thinking. So to close things out, as always, check out our socials: Twitter at JankDiverGaming, YouTube.com/JankDiverGaming. Find Teld on YouTube, or Twitch.tv/TeldTalks, TELD Talks, and we will have more Cube related content. Hopefully, let's aim for a positive note episode for the next one. How about that?
Yeah, hard agree.
And we'll go ahead and close out with that. Thanks for listening to us gripe. I assume this resonates with a lot of other people, that there's no way we're the only people like complaining about it in this capacity. So with that being said, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. If MTGO chat was a real person. Oh, hey man, I'm excited to play some Magic today. Long work week, what was your name again? I'm the Magic the Gathering online chat feature. Pleasure to meet you too. GLHF, big fan. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, good luck. So I guess I'll go ahead and keep. And, that's just fucking great. Another mulligan. Guess I'll just mulligan every game of the league. Mole, all day, every day. Fuck my life. Oh, dang. Sorry, man. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start off with a swamp, and I'll Thought Seize you, going down to 18. Wow. Turn 1 Thought Seize. Does anyone have any originality in Magic anymore? And they always have it on turn 1, don't they? Hey, man, I'm just trying to play the game here. I don't know. No, it's cool. I'm just having a bad day with my opponents just always having it, and the shuffler's been rigged all day, and I just keep getting paired into my worst matchups. Yeah, look, that sucks, but I'm still going to take that card, and I'll go down to 18, and I'll pass the turn. Okay, guess I'll just play a tap land and pass. Go ahead and top deck the best card in your deck or whatever. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and play a Douthie Voidwalker. Oh, awesome. Douthie Voidwalker against my Reanimator deck. Isn't that convenient? Who even plays Voidwalker anymore? That hasn't been meta since 2022. I watched Saffron Olive play it on stream a few times, and he just got crushed over and over and over. But nope, my opponents just get what they need every single time. Dude, I'm not really comfortable with the way I hope you literally die. I hope you fall off a cliff and die. Whoa, not cool, man. Look, this is just a game. You're right. That's not okay for me to say. No, it's really not, man. Can we just play the game? Little Mr. Sensitive over here doesn't like it when I tell him he should eat shit and die. Okay, Mr. Voidwalker on turn 2, I hope you stub your toe instead. How about that? Alright, I'm just gonna go ahead and report you. Stub your toe and then die? I hope you die of stubbed toe. You're just awful at this game. Good luck sacking in the next rounds when you play against someone who doesn't have to mulligan. Alright, look, I've reported you. I'm just gonna wait out the timer. Oh no, I've been reported. Whatever will I do? Maybe I'll just play a normal game of Magic to pass the time, except I don't have any fucking non-lands in my hand. I think you need some help. And everyone's always like, ooh, Magic Arena this, Magic Arena that. You don't even like Alchemy, you posers. Arena Cube sucks. We have Vintage Cube over here. What do you have to say about that? Well, at least Arena doesn't have a chat feature. Nope, no chat feature on Arena. Just oopses and good games and little cat emotes. Are you seriously still going on over there? And Tron players always have natural Tron. No variance in Magic for my opponents, only for me. This is why everyone's leaving for Lorcana, because Magic is actual literal garbage, and so are all my opponents. Anything else? Nope, guess I'll just draw a card for turn and... Oh, I guess I actually just have the combo. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I win. Hey, good game, man.